This is a 2011 Infiniti G37 IPL, and it was peak Infiniti. Infiniti is Nissan's luxury brand, and it's had its good years and its bad years. Recently, they've all been bad, but there was a time when Infiniti was making cool, desirable, exciting cars, and this was the very best one. Today, I'm going to review the G37 IPL and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, good news, this G37 IPL is currently for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This is really the dream Infiniti with a manual transmission, all the IPL upgrades, and no stupid modifications, which is pretty hard to find with these, and you can buy it on Cars and Bids. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to visit the live auction for this IPL G, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of the G37, starting with a little history. The Infiniti G, famous car, originally came out here in the States in the early 90s as a front-wheel drive, kind of sporty, kind of efficient sedan called the G20. But it was in 2003 that the G switched to rear-wheel drive, got more power, and changed the world. It was called the G35, and it was, and I know because I lived through it, the first real, credible Japanese competitor to the BMW 3 Series, which at the time was like the default sports sedan choice if you wanted a performance car with some practicality. Everybody bought a 3 Series, and then there was a new competitor in town. Motor Trend called it Car of the Year. It was a massive success, and that original G35 was built on the same platform that served the Nissan 350Z, which also came out then, and the new Infiniti FX SUV, which was also a big hit and dynamically a pretty good car. It was the absolute heyday of Infiniti, and a great period for Nissan too. The early 2000s with the G35 and that 3.5-liter VQ V6 that was powerful, reliable, and just plain good. But while the original G35 may have changed the world, the second generation model improved it. It came out as a sedan in 07 and a coupe, this car, in 08, and it was called the G37, now to reflect a larger powertrain. Still a VQ V6, but now boosted to 3.7 liters, 330 horsepower, and about 270 pound-feet of torque. Again, everybody went wild. A great, powerful, desirable Japanese alternative to the 3 Series. It was fantastic. And then in 2011, they came out with IPL, which stood for Infiniti Performance Line. And it was supposed to be, well, a line of high-performance Infinitis, intended to be Infiniti's rival to BMW's M division. The very first, and as it turned out, only IPL car was this one, the G37 Coupe and Convertible. People don't remember, but they did an IPL G Convertible, and it had a lot of upgrades over the already sporty standard car. For one, it had more power. Horsepower boosted to 350 from 330, and torque was up to about 275 pound-feet, a slight increase over the regular G. And just to show you how serious they were, they printed IPL under the hood. On the plastic engine cover, IPL, so you knew that you were looking at the powerful one. But upgrades to the IPL G went beyond just more power and torque. There were some other sporty themed revisions as well. Probably the most noticeable was more aggressive styling. You can see up front the bumper is more aggressive than what you would get on the standard G37 Coupe. It looks sportier and more performance oriented, if you will. In back you had the same deal, a lower, sportier rear bumper that was changed compared to the standard car, although that upgrade was probably overshadowed by the exhaust tips, which you can see are quite large. These are not aftermarket, believe it or not. These are the upgraded factory G37 IPL exhaust tips, and they came at the end of an upgraded exhaust over the standard car to allow it to sound more exciting. Take a listen to how they did. And there were some other important upgrades to the IPL G as well. One is the wheels, a distinctive 19-inch wheel design that set the IPL G37 apart from the standard car. And since we're talking cosmetics, the badge on the back, IPL. Interestingly, this badge appears in only one place on the entire car, and that's the trunk, unless you count under the hood where you can't see it. You don't have it on the wheels, the front bumper, it's nowhere inside, just that one little badge on the back that told everybody you had the IPL. Now, beyond the cosmetics, there were also some other performance enhancements. You had sportier suspension, for example, obviously that gave the car a sportier driving experience through turns, and Infiniti reportedly tuned the steering so it was more direct and quicker compared to the standard G37 Coupe. Now, interestingly, on the inside of this car, nothing changed. Even though this was the IPL, the high-performance version, this special new performance line they were debuting with this car, there were no significant changes to the interior. There were only two upgrades that I can see. One is this little decal placed directly below the shift lever that has the shift pattern on it, along with the IPL logo. And two, the seats have red stitching. That may have been available on regular Gs. I can't find one with red stitching, so I'm gonna assume it was an IPL change, but that was it. You didn't get IPL badging on the dashboard, a plaque anywhere, embossed into the headrest, nothing. They just gave you the regular car interior, but you did get those nice performance and cosmetic upgrades on the outside. And speaking of that, one more upgrade worth noting, exterior color. There were only three offered on the IPL G. There was a gray called Graphite Shadow, there was a white, and then there's this, Malbec Black is what they call it, but it's really sort of a deep cherry purple black. It's a shame I shot the exterior on a rainy day because it really is a cool looking color, and in my opinion, the very best IPL G color of them all. It's beautiful in the right sunlight, and it kind of switches between black and dark purple and almost a beautiful red. It's really a surprisingly nice color on this car. But beyond all the IPL stuff, let's talk through some general quirks and features of the G37, starting actually with the exterior, which I always felt was beautiful. The original G35 did change the world with rear-wheel drive, attractive pricing, a powerful engine, but it never really looked that great, sedan or coupe. The second generation model really cleaned up the look. Both the sedan and the coupe got more attractive, but the coupe in particular came with a swoopy yet forceful, aggressive yet beautiful overall general design. I really think it's one of the more attractive Japanese cars in its era. They really did a great job with how this car looks. And to be honest, I think the design is still relevant and attractive even today, 17 years after it first came out. Hard to believe it's been so long. The other interesting exterior quirk on this car is the hidden button that pops open the trunk. You can see it's right here integrated into the taillight on the driver's side. Now, over on the passenger side, there's no button there at all, just nothing. So you only have the one trunk button, and you have to know exactly where it is if you want to pop open the trunk. Push it, it opens, and you get in. And next up, we move inside the IPL G, where the first thing you notice is a rather wide range of materials used in here. You have, for instance, this rather attractive brushed aluminum over on the passenger side of the dashboard and on the door panels. It looks really good with this sort of brush design into it, and it's also included here in the center control stack. It gives it a pretty attractive upscale look. But then, if you look into the center console, you see rather crappy, kind of cheap, hard plastic that really doesn't look so great. And so you get a little bit of a mishmash of materials in here. Now, speaking of that center console, probably the most hilarious quirk in this entire interior is the way the heated seat controls work. They are mounted here in the center, and they are dials, and you twist to the right to increase the amount of heat from the heated seat. Now, that's not all that unusual, but the funny thing is there's a little light in the twist part of the dial that actually gets brighter as you twist it. So when you first turn on your heated seat, the light is dim, but then you twist and twist, and the light gets brighter and brighter to signify that it is becoming a more heated seat, which is an interesting way to do a heated seat control, but that's what they've done. Now, next to the heated seat controls, you have this roll-top center panel. You push it back, and this is where your cup holders are located. And you can see the owner of this car actually went to the trouble of putting aftermarket Infiniti logo coasters into the cup holders to add to the Infinity-ness of this interior. I didn't meet the guy who owns this car, but I have a feeling he absolutely loves this G. Another example, it has IPL plate frames, both front and rear. These have to be the only IPL branded plate frames in existence, and he's got them on this car. It seems like he was really proud of it, and he should be. This is a really nice example of maybe Infiniti's best ever car. But anyway, next up we move on to some more interesting quirks in here. One rather unusual one is the fact that this car locks you in if you lock the door. So if you press the power door lock button to lock the doors, then when you go to open up the door, you can't. Every other car, when the doors are locked, if you go to open the driver door, it will automatically unlock the door. So you don't have to go through the two-step process of unlocking the door and then opening it, but not this car. You lock the door, then you pull on the handle, nothing happens. You have to unlock it first, and then you can get out, which is insane design, but it's Infiniti weirdness. And speaking of Infiniti weirdness, you will notice on the center control stack, an analog clock. They've put that in here, I assume, to make sure to keep it classy inside of this G37 interior, because that's exactly what you think of when you see a G37, classy. Anyway, moving up from the clock, I have to say this infotainment system is actually not as bad as you might expect, considering it's in a 13-year-old car with a small screen and a lot of buttons below it. Strangely enough, despite all these buttons, this is a touchscreen, and it's shockingly responsive to your touch. It actually moves pretty quickly through what you want to see in this infotainment system. This also has Bluetooth, which not every car had back in 2011, so that's a pretty nice benefit, and it has a backup camera, so you shift into reverse, there's your camera. The quality is just as good as new backup cameras in new Audi models, so that's pretty good. But anyway, on the subject of screens, we move on to the gauge cluster, where you'll notice the screen in there isn't quite as modern as the infotainment. It's all black and white with big pixels, and frankly, not that many of them. It's not exactly the most modern thing, but it does the job, and interestingly enough, it's controlled by two buttons on the side of the gauge cluster that you don't push. They're not in the front anyway, where the actual icon on the button is located. You push them around the side. So you see what the button does, and then you actually push it over on the back of the button, which is a very unusual control. Now, one thing I will say about that button set and all the other buttons and switches in this car, they feel pretty nice. Everything in here is actually pretty high quality feeling, which is kind of a surprise. I wasn't really expecting that, given Nissan quality in this era. Japanese cars in general, to be honest, but this one is actually pretty nice. Everything in here feels pretty good to touch, and the overall design and look of this interior is pretty good. Again, some cheaper materials, and probably more than I would expect in a luxury car. You couldn't get away with this much cheap plastic today, but it does look generally nice in here, feel generally nice, and the overall design is pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a car from this era. It's pretty decent. And next up, we move on to the back seat in this car. The G37 Coupe had back seats, but as you can see, they're pretty small. Headroom is pretty limited because of the swooping low roofline of the car, and there's only two back seats. Obviously, they figured if you really wanted to frequently carry passengers in one of these, you would get the sedan version with 4 doors and a full-size back seat. But the seats are back here, and in between them, you have this little kind of storage tray where you can put stuff, and you have cup holders back here, which once again again have even more Infiniti coasters that were added by the owner to infinitize this interior. In fact, back here you will also notice that the seat belts have these Infiniti branded seat belt covers that the owner of this car also put on. I'm telling you, he loved this car. He clearly thought it was very special and took good care of it with coasters and seat belt protectors. Now, also back here, you can see the carpet in the very center has the Infiniti logo on it. This was not added by the owner of this car. That is factory Infiniti, making sure you knew exactly what brand of car you were riding in, even if you were sitting in the back. Other than that, not too much interesting going on in the back seats because, again, they didn't really expect that you would use them all that often. And next up, we move on to the trunk of the IPL G, the cargo area. Open it up with that little hidden button, and you will notice back here, the trunk is actually fairly large. It's wide, it's pretty deep, but it has a surprisingly high floor. There's not all that much space, even though it's a pretty big surface area, and the reason for that is under the floor, they've mounted a spare tire in here. It's just a temporary tire, but unlike other automakers that give you like a can of Fix-A-Flat to save space and increase your cargo area, here you suffer from some cargo area loss, but you do get a spare tire that you can change if you have a flat. Other items worth noting in here, number one, despite the relatively small size of this cargo area, you can get 2 golf bags in here, or at least that's what they tell you with this little diagram on the inside of the trunk lid, which perfectly shows you how you're intended to place 2 golf bags in the trunk of your G37 Coupe if you want them to fit inside, which is kind of funny to see. It gives you an idea of who they thought their customers would be, and in case people thought, oh, I can't get 2 golf bags in here, they wanted to prove that you could. Now, one other important item worth noting back here, this latch on the top of the cargo area will fold the rear seat, which is nice to have in the trunk. Usually you don't see that in coupes, but here, instead of having to go back to the seat, reach in, fold it down, if you have some larger item, you just pull on that latch, the seat releases, and then you can push it through. Now, the last thing you will notice in here is this, a binder laminated with all of the service records of this car from the current owner's history with it. I told you he loved this thing, and if you open it up, you will notice on the first page some IPL shift pattern graphics. So wait a second, I thought that was a special thing about the interior of this car. No, it turns out the owner of this car made it himself, which means that, well, there isn't anything special about the interior of this car, but I do like the look of that shift pattern graphic that this one has. And finally, let's talk about what happened. IPL, the G37, it was Infiniti's peak era, and this was the peak car. So where did they go from here? Well, the answer is SUVs, mostly. People wanted SUVs instead of cars. Buyers' tastes changed, and frankly, Infiniti got confused. They didn't really adapt to SUVs all that well, and they didn't really do much to improve their car lineup either. This car, the G37 Coupe, was eventually renamed the Q60 and eventually redesigned, but people weren't really interested in a luxury coupe anymore, and so it died after the 22 model year. The sedan version did a little better. They renamed it the Q50, eventually redesigned that, but it died after 24, and now the G37 line is completely gone from Infiniti's lineup after all the success it gave them 20 years ago. The IPL brand only ever existed in this one car. It was going to become a line of performance Infinitis. That's why they called it Infiniti Performance Line, but it never did. Eventually, there was another sporty Infiniti called Red Sport that was also supposed to be a whole line, but that never really went anywhere either, and now they don't have any performance branding at all. And in fact, the Infiniti brand is kind of a shadow of what it used to be. It faces an uncertain future with rather unpopular cars that are pretty commonly only sold to rental fleets. It isn't what it once was, but this car shows that there was a time when Infiniti was something. And now it's time to get it out on the road. Get behind the wheel of the ultimate Infiniti, the G37 IPL. Let's do it. All right, driving the IPL G. It is impossible for me to explain how much college Doug wanted this car. I graduated from college in 2010, and the second gen G35/G37 had just come out. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I thought it looked good. I thought the V6 was cool and powerful. They had them with a stick. Like, this car I wanted so badly back in the day. I've driven a few of these obviously over the years, although it's been quite a while, and I've never driven an IPL G. Most people have never seen one or don't even know that it exists. But just like I had dreamed about as a kid, this motor is just great. This was a beloved engine, and deservedly so, because it did basically everything you wanted, which was it produced good power at good places, and it did it reliably. And especially in this era, like with the early turbocharging era, that was harder to do than you realize. BMW M3, not that it was a direct competitor, but a great V8, but the power was high up and it wasn't the most reliable. And you could go for days on various other engines from this period that, okay, an early turbocharged motor was great, but it had problems. Mercedes 6.2 had a lot of benefits. It produced the right power at the right place in the right amount, but it had head bolt issues. A lot of engines were too peaky. This one just did it all. It had great power and great performance exactly where you wanted that power to be. Now, I will say the manual transmission situation in this car is kind of interesting. Never driven a stick before. Not many of them around, but there are some cool things about this one, some benefits and some drawbacks. Benefit, like the clutch, it's not as light as I was hoping or as linear. It's a little kinked and a little heavy, but it's fine. I really like the gearbox, interestingly. The shift throws are short and it notches right into gear. It feels exactly like you'd want like a really well-designed manual transmission to feel, kind of surprisingly so. Now, the drawback actually comes with the motor and the rev situation. There's a decent amount of rev hang, which is a shame because this was a performance car, and I always associate rev hang with like rental cars where they stick you in a manual and you can't really do much about it. And of course, rev hang is when you're going to upshift, you push in the clutch, you want the revs to fall quickly, and in this car, they didn't fall as quickly as I was kind of expecting them to as you're getting into the next gear. The other thing I really liked about this car, the thing that everybody liked about this car, is it actually handled really well, especially considering what it was. If you didn't have any pretense that you were getting a BMW M4, but you were just getting like a Japanese version of it, a Japanese version of kind of a lesser example, but a lot cheaper. This car really delivered a pretty good driving experience in terms of handling, shifting, steering. The steering feels a little over-assisted, but mainly is very predictable and very precise considering that this is a 12-year-old Infiniti. I'm kind of impressed about that. Man, that rev hang. Oh, yikes. But I just love how much power the car has and how fast it feels. This is a fun car, even all this time later. And in fact, sitting in this car and driving it around at 65,000 miles after 12, 13 years, it's pretty well put together still. This car actually feels sportier than I was thinking it would. 350 horses, obviously these days, is not a huge amount of power, but back in the day, it was a pretty decent number, especially at its price point. If you have any nostalgia for this era, for 2005 to 2015, and you're a car enthusiast, you can't talk about that era and not talk about the Infiniti G. And this was the ultimate Infiniti G, for better or worse, because so many of them are now heinously modified and being used for street takeovers. But here's a nice one that shows us how it was, and honestly, it was pretty good. We were pretty spoiled by the fact that for a brief glimpse of time there, we had a Japanese alternative to BMW. It wasn't as good, it wasn't as dynamically impressive, but there was good tech and a lot of power for affordable money, and still a pretty damn good driving experience with rear-wheel drive, a manual transmission, and a reliable, powerful engine. That's what this car delivered, and frankly, that's what this car still delivers, and I still find it to be pretty impressive. And so that's the 2011 Infiniti G37 IPL. When I was younger, I wanted one of these so badly, and it's hard to believe now because Infiniti has fallen so far, but there was a time when Infiniti rocked. They made great cars, and this one is proof, and you can buy it on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the IPL G a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 53 out of 100, which puts the IPL G37 here against some competitors. It doesn't beat out true sports cars like the Porsche Cayman or C5 Corvette Z06, but that's no surprise. The G37 has more of a luxury focus than those cars, with 4 leather seats and a smoother ride. But the IPL G is a fairly well-rounded car, delivering decent performance, good reliability, and better tech than I was expecting, and it really was peak Infiniti.